Vorkuta, Russia is a small remote town in one of the most northern developed parts of Russia. Its landscape is among some of the most inhospitable in the country. This liminal image captures what seems to be an abandoned housing complex in Vorkuta. This image and others taken around the same time have circulated the internet for many years, displaying Russia's harsh reality of crumbling and outdated towns, while in a way still feeling nostalgic or eerily familiar. In Vorkuta, where this image was taken, most months temperatures rarely rise above freezing. Naturally, this makes for a rather depressing place to call home. The only reason Vorkuta and small neighboring towns even exist can be summed up with one word: coal. Vorkuta was founded in the 1930s during Stalin's rapid industrialization of the Soviet Union, built atop massive coal reserves found in the region. Its construction was a grueling one, lasting many years. Almost all labor was sourced from prisoners using the Gulag system, which was a network of labor camps consisting of mostly criminals. So Vorkuta being built on the back of heinous, inhumane work conditions in the early 1930s definitely sets the stage for a dark, grueling, somewhat cruel way of life. Not to mention the Vorkuta mine disaster on the morning of February 25, 2016. The old Soviet coal mine experienced one of the worst mining disasters in Russia's history, sadly taking the lives of 36 people. The background of the image shows what seems to be abandoned Khrushchev-era apartment buildings. Buildings that were built extremely quick and cheap in the early 50s and 60s to solve the post-war housing crisis. The apartments in the photo are now left abandoned, most likely because of the town's decreasing population, with it only being around 55,000 in 2025. All of this gives context to why this photo gives such a soul-crushing feeling of loneliness. The city is not completely abandoned, it's just overbuilt for a future that doesn't exist. Today I'd like to discuss and discover the origin and history of popular Russian liminal spaces. While many of these photos don't necessarily feel nostalgic to me, I still gather a lot of emotion from them. The next image I want to talk about is this one. It's been a staple on Reddit and Pinterest for a long time now. The picture shows what seems to be an old decrepit concrete lobby. It's also known as Silent Plaza in the Backrooms fandom. Finding this image was pretty straightforward because it had something that almost none of these liminal photos ever have, which is a watermark. It reads, Alexander Zaitsev, 2013, then a link. I immediately got excited and typed it into Google, but of course the website is no longer active. That would have been too easy. I then put the link into the Wayback Machine and boom, there it was. I also noticed that the website had been down since around 2019, which is a shame. It has some really awesome liminal photography. Alexander, the person behind the blog, is a photographer from Minsk, Russia, who uploaded his work spanning over 10 years. This photo of his was partly made popular by Reddit back in the early 2010s, eventually making its way to every other part of the internet, cementing itself as a liminal space. The building itself is called the Chisinau Circus. While technically located in Moldova, it was formerly the Soviet Union. It was built in 1981 in a very distinct Soviet modernist or brutalist style. The venue was a sort of permanent circus, not like the usual pop-up tent or festival. It consisted of a massive circular arena with thousands of seats, backstage areas, and other lobbies and corridors. The whole building is made of thick concrete. After years of economic problems, it became largely unused and disrepaired, leading to its closure in 2004. The building was then left abandoned for almost 20 years, due to renovations being delayed, lack of funds, and other legal battles, leaving it in a sort of twilight zone, empty and barren. This is when Alexander snapped the photo. Thankfully, in 2022, new conservation efforts began, which are attempting to restore and conserve this marvel of Soviet-era architecture. Also, I don't have an ad read or sponsorship for this video. If you'd like, you can check out my music. I'll put something on the screen right here. If you want to give it a listen, that would be dope. But anyways, back to the video. This image has always been very striking to me. It looks almost too perfect to be real. This photo once again gained widespread attention from posts on Reddit. It's also just objectively an artistic and beautiful photo. At first glance, I had no idea this picture originated from Russia, but after reading the comments, it makes sense, like this one for example. I lived in Russia, and it sure looks like it. Maybe another Slavic country though. The 3 is written in this font, which was used to mark floors in most buildings built after World War II. The apartments built after World War II the commenter is referring to are the Khrushchev-era apartment buildings we discussed earlier in the video. Cheap and quickly built apartments that were littered everywhere in Russia, Moldova, and the Ukraine. Now that I know that this photo came from one of these places, it definitely narrows down the hunt. I tried reverse image searching on Google and just got pointed back to the same old Reddit posts from the last 7 years. Then I decided to search using the Yandex, which for those of you who don't know, the Yandex is sort of like Russia's Google. This came up with an overwhelming amount of images. I found well over 100 pictures of similar stairwells. A lot of these images had the same paint and design, and some even had the exact same handrails. Also, weirdly enough, a lot of these images of similar apartments came from news articles talking about violent crime or tenants complaining about the horrible state of the buildings. As I continued to search, I stumbled upon things that made me think, am I the first random American guy to look at this? I looked for 2 hours through the Yandex and old Russian forums, and I couldn't find anything. Although I found a ton of similar photos that were really cool in their own right, especially this one that's super similar to the image. If I had to guess, some Russian guy living in one of these old Soviet apartments saw a beautiful sunset, took a picture of it, and then posted it on a Russian forum around 2015. It probably got a little attention back then, but I bet he has no idea how much it's been shared and talked about over the years. If any of you guys know anything about this photo, feel free to drop it in the comments. Russia's online presence has always been kind of mystical to me. It has a treasure trove of memes, cursed images, and nightmare fuel. There's something almost magical about the early 2000s Russian internet. It feels strangely beautiful, but also deeply sad. It has a very blunt honesty to it, and I think its unintentional artfulness is what makes it so intriguing. Russian architecture and interior design also remind me a lot of the North Korean aesthetic. Concrete, strange color palettes, and the same Soviet outdatedness. Although North Korea is far more depressing than old Russian cities. I started looking into some North Korean liminal spaces, and this one was one of my favorites. The color choices and the use of marble are very interesting. This picture itself is extremely surreal. This image was taken at the Mansudae Assembly Hall in Pyongyang, North Korea. An important note of what makes a lot of North Korea look so liminal and kind of eerie is the absence of people. You see a city designed to house parades and festivals, but you rarely ever see them happening. Also, the scale of everything is huge. Things were built way bigger than they needed to be. Ryan Murdoch, an author and journalist, visited North Korea in 2009 and took this picture of a grocery store in Pyongyang. He shared his account of the process on his blog that reads, "They finally agreed to show us a supermarket. When we walked in, I was immediately surprised by the number of goods on the shelves. I'd expected scarcity. It wasn't crammed like the shelves in the West. The goods were more sparsely laid out. There didn't appear to be shortages of anything. On closer inspection, I discovered that every single item was imported from Argentina. A foreign aid worker from Scandinavia who happened to be shopping in one of the aisles filled us in. Apparently the store was run by an Argentine businessman as a joint venture with the North Korean government, and it was where the North Korean elite and resident foreigners shopped." This sentiment adds a whole other weirdness to the photograph. The store is sort of just fake. It resembles what a store would look like if someone tried to recreate a Western grocery store but had never been to one. Something just feels off. In conclusion, I think what makes a lot of these Russian and North Korean images unsettling and liminal is that they are in the in-between states of being not totally abandoned but also not fully alive. Which makes sense being that the definition of liminal is a state, space, or time that exists on the boundary or in between two different states. My own perspective also heavily weighs on how I feel about these images. For example, I see this picture and I think, elementary school, and it makes me feel nostalgic for a time when I was interacting with a lot of places like that. It's also weirdly comforting. So if a 23-year-old Russian guy sees this, maybe he thinks, oh yeah, I used to live in a building just like that. Or maybe he doesn't. If you're a Russian person watching this right now, I'd like to formally apologize for how much I probably mispronounced things, and also how much shit I might have just gotten wrong. Regardless of politics, Russia is very intriguing and I'd love to visit there someday. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. That's the end of the video. Sorry that this one was a little more jank. I made most of this in my car because my power was out for a week and a half, but we're back now. And yeah, thanks. Check out my music if you want to. I'm gonna start uploading more. See you later. Goodbye.